When it comes to the genre of romance in the context of Japan, particularly fiction targeted towards the specific demographic of teenage, young adult, and/or adult women, we find ourselves in a very broad yet complex space, from categories of shoujo to josei and everything in between. Not only is the complexity in terms of the myriad subcategories and themes, but also in its various forms of anime, manga, light novels, to name a few, and the topic of today's video, Otome games. Hi, this is Arya Luna and welcome back to my channel. I decided to make this video about Otome games because there's been an interesting phenomenon that's taking place in that area. These games have not only veered outside of their original context of production in Japan, but they have been moving into much more mainstream gaming spaces. I'm assuming that if you've clicked on this video, this particular image looks familiar to you. Yes, it is a promotional material from the phenomenally successful Otome game Love and Deepspace, made by the now multi-million-dollar company and game developer Infold Games. It is one of those examples where a Japanese cultural concept, that is Otome, is being productively engaged with in a different cultural context. Love and Deepspace is a Chinese game in every way, shape, and form, from the context of its production to the characters, motifs, and symbolism, and its target audience is predominantly adult women in China with disposable income. The game is localized in different languages, so the target audience is extended to a global one, of course. The game is very popular for being the first fully 3D Otome game, with gacha mechanics that is quite bold when handling some darker themes, which have led to a lot of confusion and controversy in the global fandoms. This is also another reason why I wanted to make this video. It's to show you how true to the genre of Otome game this game is, and how some classic titles of Otome games deal with themes far darker than in Love and Deepspace. But mainly I want to talk about the genre of Otome games and how they work. So if you're new to this, you are inclined to try them out, you get an idea of what they're supposed to be and what you should expect. In case you're completely unfamiliar with the term, Otome games, or Japanese Otome game, literally translated as maiden games, are visual novel games or story-based games that are targeted towards women. They are essentially a kind of RPG where you play as a female MC or a protagonist who is supposed to build romantic relationships with usually male love interests, who are secondary characters in the game. Each story route you take usually leads to one of the love interests, and each route usually has multiple endings: a good, a normal, and a bad ending. And the good ending is usually all sweet and romantic, and the bad endings are quite wild, usually. So they can lead to MCs or another major character death, or to extremely distressing or oppressive situations. Sometimes these games are categorized under the broader umbrella term of joseimuke, which includes all types of media, anime, manga, and video games, targeted towards a female audience. I'll talk about some of the Otome games that I have played as examples. One thing to remember is that these games, like a lot of other types of fiction, are not meant to be feel-good most of the time. They actively engage in discussions around difficult, uncomfortable topics to make the player think. Yes, it is partly about safe exploration of dark fantasy, but it is also about self-reflection, questioning social norms, expectations, and testing boundaries. And yeah, sometimes the plot contains extremely morally questionable topics, but it is there to make you think and question before accepting something. If that is not for you, that's also completely fine. You are allowed to dislike something, but calling for a censorship of all uncomfortable things makes fiction lose its primary function of starting important public conversations, sometimes that happens to be about difficult topics. This has been a topic of discussion in various fandoms online and has become more prominent recently because of a vocal minority who want to erase everything that makes them uncomfortable. But I digress. Before I segue into something entirely different, let's pause and take a look at what otome means. In an academic journal titled Pursuing One's Own Prince, Love's Fantasy in Otome Game Contents and Fan Practice, Letitia Andlauer writes that, and I quote, "Otome is an archaic but nostalgic term in Japanese that traditionally refers to an unmarried young girl, evoking the ideal of her femininity and virginity. But contemporary understandings of the term otome is quite different. Broad and flexible, it can simply mean a girl who likes consuming otaku cultural products. And otome can be used to describe a quote-unquote female otaku. The vagueness also leaves plenty of space for these games to topple the heteronormative assumptions of the original term. Otome games create safe spaces for exploring not only darker fantasies but also a lot of difficult themes. Moreover, Andlauer argues, quote, as otome games in particular depict conventional ideas about heterosexual relationships, they present a way to investigate gender construction through media and to interrogate the reception of those representations by young girls, as in the players themselves. In my experience of playing multiple otome games, some MCs or protagonists are young adults who may display some amount of naivety or specific culturally dictated ideas of femininity, but a lot of otome narratives offer a nuanced negotiation of heteronormative discourses. Andlauer's article is from 2018 and it refers to otome games as being a part of a niche market in Japan, but they have been slowly making their way into global markets. Now, in 2026, I can confidently say that otome games are quite popular globally, and they are getting a lot of attention because of highly successful games like Love and Deepspace. It is closely tied to the boom that the gaming industry experienced during the pandemic, particularly in the space of mobile games. Anime RPG gacha games by big Chinese game developers were a huge part of this boom. Think Genshin Impact by Hoyoverse, or later Wuthering Waves by Kuro Games. Fun fact, Hoyo also has an otome game on their roster called Tears of Themis. It's actually a really nice game. And for Infold Games, Love and Deepspace wasn't their first popular game. They made a game called Mr. Love, Queen's Choice, which will see an end of service in March 2026. Some classic Japanese titles of traditional otome games have been eclipsed by the success of these online gacha variants. I suppose the biggest reason for this is that these mobile gacha variants are free to play, even though you can spend money in the gacha section of it. And they are constantly updating. So there are ongoing stories and ongoing updated interactions with characters. But I do recommend trying some classic otome titles to really get the feel of the genre. As far as I remember, my first otome game was Mystic Messenger 10 years ago. It is a South Korean otome game developed by Cherits. In this game, the MC finds herself roped into returning a phone to an unknown address and ends up having a suspicious app installed on her phone. This app leads MC into a work chat room of a fundraising organization called RFA. For the player, all in-game interactions happen through this messenger app installed on MC's phone in the story. MC is forcefully recruited into the organization, and as part of the team, she goes through a fascinating journey, building deep relationships with the characters and uncovering the secrets of RFA and its members. The game has some beautifully written characters, contains some dark, heavy, and emotional themes, and significant moral implications for the choices that the MC is faced with. Another memorable otome game for me is Amnesia Memories. It is quite dark from the start. The MC wakes up after losing all her memories, and the reason for her amnesia is a strange supernatural entity who appears like a boy with horns is trapped inside her head, and she needs to get her memories back to push this creature out of her head. It's quite bizarre but really interesting as a concept because it allows for a lot of complex plot lines and characters. The 4 love interests and a secret one try to convince you that they are your romantic partner, and some of them have questionable ideas of how they should go about the process. Another Otome game that I recently played is Piofiore Faded Memories, which is a game set in the interwar period in 1920s Italy, and the 5 love interests all belong to the Italian mafia. There's a lot of violence in the plot, some dark complex characters, and some very difficult choices that the MC needs to make in some of the routes. It is really good, and the voice cast has some wonderful beloved seiyuu, so I do recommend this one. Some other titles that come to mind are Variable Barricade and Collar X Malice. Variable Barricade I did not enjoy that much, but Piofiore and Collar X Malice I recommend, especially if you like dark romance thrillers. Otome games like these take everyday occurrences, microaggressions, or misogynistic behavior and amplify them to drive a point across. They are there to make its female players question their own realities in a safe way within the safe spaces of fiction. Fiction like these exist not, and I repeat not, to brainwash you into accepting morally questionable behavior, but to pause and think and reflect and question the problems that exist in your own reality. So, if you started a mainstream title like Love and Deepspace and are confused about why it is veering into a complex, morally gray direction in the story, it is because it has every element of a classic Otome game and it is just fulfilling its role as that. So, basically, what I love about Otome games is precisely the difficult situation that the MC is put through. It creates morally complex dynamics and expectations, explores different power dynamics within its visual novel setup. So in a visual novel game, the player is an active part of the storytelling process. Players can write their own story within the confines of the story world of the game itself. A lot of the choices that you as a player make in these visual novels makes you pause and think. Critically thinking about what you consume and reading in between the lines is very important. So if you're new to this genre, I hope you now have a better idea of what Otome games are. I hope you enjoyed this video or learned something new. If so, please don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I am new to this video making business, so it helps me a lot. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!